If you're having trouble with students in your classroom, then this video is for you. You're probably like most teachers and you feel like you spend most of your time dealing with behavior issues and problems in the classroom and just it takes away from what you really want to do, which is teaching. It is a very frustrating place to be, and to be honest with you, it is just exhausting. And you might even be thinking to yourself, man, is this career even worth it? I can honestly tell you, I know exactly how you feel. When I first started teaching 20 years ago, man, there were so many nights I would go home discouraged, worn out, and to be honest with you, actually in tears. I mean, I was a grown man and I would go home crying because those students, that behavior, it just tore me down. But luckily, fast forward 20 years, here I am, and I can honestly tell you as well that I am so glad I stuck with it. Now, don't get me wrong, I mean, it's not like a bed of roses every single day, and there's still things that come up. But overall, I love my career. I love my job. And that's what I want to talk to you about, and that's what I want to help you with. One of the greatest struggles teachers have is classroom management. And if you're one of those teachers, first thing you got to know is you're not alone. More than half the teachers I talk to are going through the same exact thing. The struggle is real, but it does not have to be that way. As I mentioned, when I first started teaching, that was my Achilles heel, the classroom management. In fact, I almost got fired because my students were just so out of control. So I made it my personal goal to help any teachers out there that were struggling like I did when I first started teaching. So what I did is I created a course on classroom management. It's a total of 16 videos, and it walks you through from just pulling your hair out to going home happy every day. And I honestly believe that you can transform your classroom in a matter of 20 days if you follow the steps in this program. So to make the course available to as many teachers as possible, I took all those separate videos and combined them into one long video, which is what we're watching right now, with the idea that hopefully I could reach as many teachers as possible. In the thousands would be wonderful, so that way they can basically have the classroom that they're always wanted. So with that said, let's get started. If there's anything else I can do in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know how I am so excited you are here. I honestly feel that you are in the right place at the right time. So here's what we got going on in this course. First of all, just kind of give you an idea how it's all broken down. You got 3 different modules. The first module is all about creating the right mindset, all right? Creating the right mindset. And then once you have the right mindset, you're able to go on to module number 2, which is the preparation, preparing for your classroom transformation. And then finally, you have the third module, which has 4 videos in it, and that's the actual implementation of your plan. So 3 different modules. First one, mindset. Second one is going to be a preparation, and the third one is implementation. Each module has about 4 videos in there. And of course, some of those videos have actual worksheets go along. Those will help you along your journey. But you definitely want to work on these in order. So work on them in order. The first module and the second module, a total of 8 videos, should take you about 1 week. All right, so 1 week to kind of go through that information, get the right mindset, know what you're looking for, preparing for the actual implementation of transforming your classroom. And then the third module, which has 4 videos in it, that's going to take you about 3 weeks. And the reason, not 3 weeks to go over the information probably you could do in one sitting if you really want to, but 3 weeks to actually give yourself time to lay out everything, to implement everything, 3 weeks to actually be consistent, so that way at the end of those 3 weeks, you can see a transformation. And so our goal with this course, if you follow it, first week, modules 1 and 2, and then the week 2 through 4 is going to be module 3, where you actually implement it. And by the end of the month, by the end of 20 school days, by the end of 4 weeks, you're going to see a classroom that you always wanted. So enjoy the videos, enjoy the course, definitely look at those worksheets. And if you ever need anything, just feel free to go ahead and send us an email. Once again, I want to congratulate you on taking the initiative to improve your classroom. You would not believe the number of teachers that live in quiet desperation and never seek and look for the information to help transform their lives or even transform their classroom. The fact that you're watching the video sets you apart from so many other teachers, and I am positive you're going to see the results that you're looking for. But if at any point in time you need additional assistance, some coaching, some one-on-one specific things for your classroom,
please feel free to reach out to me. Just go to the homepage of this course, and on the, I believe it's on the right-hand side, you'll see a link to set up an appointment for whether we can meet and talk, or just to send me an email to see how I can help you further. But with that said, enjoy the course. Before you can transform your class, you have to know exactly what kind of class you want. Now, I know it sounds easy. I want a good class, right? That's what we all want, a good class. But that means different things to different people. What's good for you is different than for me. What you want in your class might be different than what I want in my class. Now, we all want a class we're going to be happy in, but we have different thresholds, different expectations. And you really got to hone in exactly what your expectations are for your students. Because without that, you'll never ever know if you're actually hitting your goals. You'll never know if you actually have the classroom that you always wanted. So that's what this video is about, trying to hone in and trying to give you an idea of what kind of class you want. In addition to that, gives you the framework and sets you up for the rest of the course. Now, I found out about this the hard way. Here's what I mean. I kind of had the viewpoint, I kind of thought that how I ran my class is how everybody would run their class. But I've been into many different classes now, and I see that's not the case. And it's not to say my class is better or worse than somebody else. It's just different, right? And so here's what happened one day. I was, this particular year, several years ago, I was a mentor teacher to new teachers. So in our school district, we have new teachers, and they assign certain mentors to them. And so I had a teacher that was mentoring. And I remember I went to his classroom one day to observe. And so I'm sitting in the back of the class, and I'm observing what's going on. And I see these two students to kind of mess around. They started poking each other, and I started throwing things at each other. And I was kind of waiting for the teacher I was mentoring to kind of step up and say something, but he never did. And so I remember I got up, and I went over there, and I disciplined those two students. I made them stop and everything else. And then later that period, and after the period's over, him and I met, I realized that I was so in the wrong on that. First of all, I was in the wrong because the fact that I went over there took the authority away from him, and he never wanted to do that. But also I was wrong because I put my expectation of what I wanted in the class upon him. And that wasn't fair to him. And I remember I apologized and I said, I'm sorry, and I realized how wrong I was in doing that. But all that to say, we all have different expectations of our students. And so you really need to figure that out. So how do you do that? Well, first of all, I have this document attached to this video right here that'll take you through all different aspects of your classroom. And it's going to ask questions about how you want students to respond, how you want students to be during this time in your class, or how do you want students to be if they're doing an activity. And it takes you through a whole bunch of these different scenarios, so that way you know exactly what your expectations are. So that way you can drive your classroom behavior to those things. And I was thinking about it. I'm actually helping a new teacher this year as well. He's in my class, and he's kind of doing his student teaching in my class. And man, I forget just exactly how many things we do as teachers. And for like the first 5 minutes, I was just trying to take down notes of everything that we do, so that way I can give it back to him, the information, and so that way we can reflect upon things. And listen to this. First 5 minutes of class, not even the first 5 minutes of class, here's what happens in the class. If you're teaching, you can relate to this. First thing is you got students walking in. How do they walk in? Do they walk in hyper? Do they walk in calm? How do they walk in? Do they walk in pushing each other, pencil, shouting? All those things. Do you greet them at the door? Do you not greet them at the door? And then when they come into class, how are they in the first 10, 15 seconds of class? Do you want them to sit down right away when they come into class? Or are you okay if they talk a little bit and chat and say hi to their friends? And you got that going on. And then finally the bell rings. And when the bell rings, what do you want students to do? Do you want students to work right away? Do you want them to give something out? Do you want them to be prepared? Do you want them to talk with them? What do you want them to do in the first minute of class? And then when that's going on, you have all that what you want the students to do, but then things you have to do, oh my gosh. You got to make sure the students are working. You got to make sure you are prepared with your notes and everything else. You got to do your attendance. You have to take care of students coming in late. You have to take care of phone calls coming in, people asking for students to come out of the class. You got to deal with students asking to use the restroom. You get the idea. And so within the first minute or two, we have so many things going on. And if you're not sure exactly what or how you want your classroom to run,
it can quickly become overwhelming. And as soon as it starts becoming overwhelming, the game is lost, and there goes your classroom management. So once again, to help you with this, I created this worksheet, and just go by line in that worksheet, answering the question, just really thinking to yourself how you want every aspect of your class to be. And the reason you want to do that, because as you start transforming your classroom, you're going to see yourself moving closer and closer to what you want your classroom to be. And then when you finally reach that point, you'll be able to identify, like, oh my gosh, I finally have the classroom I've been hoping for. But you won't get there unless you know exactly from the beginning where you're working your program towards. So use that worksheet to kind of guide you a little bit. But here's going to be the ultimate test. It is this. Think about this past week. This past week of school, how did it go for you? Did you go home exhausted at the end of the day? Did you go home thinking to yourself, my class is out of control? Did you go home thinking, I can't believe the kids said this or did this, and you feel like they got the best?
You need to have the right presence in the classroom. Now, out of all the things that we're going to cover here, this is, in my opinion, the hardest thing to teach. I mean, it's easy to teach the different procedures you can put in place, the different routines that's going to help you manage your classroom better, and they're going to have better classroom management control overall. But this one, the right presence classroom, that's like a soft skill that it's harder to teach and to learn. And over time, you're going to develop this skill. If you already have it, that's great. But if not, this is something that's going to be developed over time. And once you develop this soft skill of having the right presence, everything just seems to really click together. So what is the right presence to have in the classroom? Man, I've been trying to think about this for years and how to put what I do into words and what other teachers do into words. How would you describe the right presence in the classroom? And I finally came up with the words several years ago. You see, what happened is my wife was doing doggy daycare. Yeah, and people would bring over their dogs to our house and we'd watch them for the day. And no joke, one time, I believe we had up to 14 dogs in our house at one single time. And I gotta tell you, I love dogs, and it was great to know that we can have 14 dogs in the same house at the same time and not have any problem. They got together along great. I mean, that for me, that was amazing. And I give all the credit on this to my wife. But I remember at that moment, at that time, my wife and I were watching a show called Cesar Millan, the Dog Whisperer. And we were watching him, and that's where we got a lot of our information from. And then we're watching him talk to one of his clients about how to walk dogs. And they were walking the dog was all out of control. And he said to them, you know, the problem is the dog needs to know that you're the leader of the pack. If you're the leader of the pack, then the dog's going to follow you. But if they sense any kind of insecurity, anything like that, they're not going to follow you. And so this is what he said. He said you have to be the leader of the pack. You have to learn to be calm, assertive. Calm, assertive. That was it. That was the presence you need to have in the classroom. That is the presence you need to have in the classroom. Calm, assertive. Now, calm doesn't mean that you're boring and nothing happens. It just means that you have your emotions in check and that the energy you put out there in the classroom is one of self-control and is one of being at peace and everything else. That's calm, all right? Assertive does not mean that you're mean, aggressive, or harsh. Assertive just means that you're in control, all right? Back to the whole control thing, right? You're in control and that you're the one that decides what happens. So if you are calm, assertive, that naturally flows into the classroom, and that is the presence you need to have in the class, that calm, assertive. And when Cesar Millan was talking to his client about how to walk dogs, and they said they're having a hard time being calm, assertive, he says, I want you to think of the most powerful person you can, or someone you really respect, or someone you think is really calm and assertive. And so they might have, I think they were thinking of somebody like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, maybe, you know, his presence, how it might fill up a room and stuff of that sort, or someone famous in history. Whatever it is, when you walk into that classroom, if you're not naturally calm and assertive, that's something you need to work on. When you walk into the classroom next time, try to imagine yourself being that person, basically conveying their energy through you. And so that is how you want to develop calm and assertive.
Like most teachers, part of the reason I became a teacher to start off with was to make a difference in students' lives. And I remember when I first started teaching, the way I went about this is I tried to make my classes as, I guess, as fun as possible, as exciting as possible. And I would just I went out of my way to make sure that I didn't upset the students. And then somewhere along the way, I realized I was actually doing a disservice to my students. You see what I was trying to do in my classroom? Forgive this analogy here, but hopefully this works here. I was trying to have a house party in my classroom, fun, exciting place, students are happy and everything else. I was trying to have the house party, but I was trying to do that before I even built a solid house. So how I look at it is like this, that your classroom management is the walls of that house. There are limits on what students can do. They're put in place, everybody knows them, everything else, but there are limits to students. That is the walls to the house. But what's interesting about these walls to the house is they provide security, they provide safety, they provide protection, and they allow the people in the house to feel comfortable, and then within those walls, they can have a good time. But you gotta build those walls first up. You gotta have that classroom management in place. When I think about my students, I would say 80% of them come from a household, their childhood is chaotic. And what my classroom is, it provides that structure for them. What your classroom needs to be, it needs to be a safe place for students, but you get that by not making it necessarily fun, exciting, and being the students' best friends. You get that by providing that stability, that structure, a place where students know what they're going to get when they get to your classroom. It's got to be predictable as well. So all these things, once you have that in place, what you're going to find out is this. Once you build those walls of your classroom with the classroom management, the students inside those walls, inside your class, are going to start bringing down some of their walls. So if you really want to connect with students, you really want to make a difference in students' lives, it all starts with classroom management.
There are so many moving pieces in your classroom. So many. Think about this. Now you got 30 students, 35 students, each one with different levels of academics, each one different social, emotional levels. And then there's you, and amongst all this, you got to try to teach students something many times they don't want to even learn. This is a very difficult situation, but that's why it's so rewarding, right? When you actually do see those changes, man, that pumps me up. So when it comes to this, once again, the goal is to transform our classroom. Focus is on classroom management. So when it comes to behavior, for this next month, when it comes to behavior, do not focus on academic behavior. What I mean by that is, if a student is not doing their work, don't invest too much effort in that. Do not discipline the student for that. That is something you will get to that point. You will get to the point where you start focusing on the academic part. But our goal right now in this month is to transform your classroom regarding behavior. Focus on that behavior that is disruptive. So for example, students talking while you're talking, definitely we got to take care of that. Students throwing things around the room, got to take care of that. Students being disrespectful, defiant, got to take care of that. But the behaviors such as I forgot my pencil or I didn't do my homework, those things are just that they're not even working. Let's not worry about that right now. Once we get once we get the classroom management under control and that is unlocked, then we take it to the next level and then we can focus on the academics. But trust me, if you focus on the academics now and you focus on the disruptive behavior, you try to do both of those at the same time, it is going to be overwhelming and both of those things are going to suffer. So for the next month, just strictly focus on that disruptive behavior. And then once we got that, then we will take it to the next level and focus on the academics. But that is behavior you want to focus on.
Now that you have the right mindset and you know exactly what you're looking for in your classroom, it's time to move on to the next stage, which is preparing your classroom for that transformation. Now, I do want to warn you that video 4 in this module is often where people kind of start fading away because video number 4 is a little bit longer, but it's also where the rubber meets the road. It's where I give you the practical steps on how to make those changes in your classroom. So when you get to module 4, make sure you plow through it, make sure you get the information, so that way you can move on to the next step, which is actually to implement everything you learn. Now, at any point in time, though, once again, if you need a little extra motivation to keep going, if you have some specific questions regarding your classroom or need further assistance, one-on-one coaching, please reach out to me. You can find the link. You can set up a time for we can meet, one-on-one, or you can just send me an email and we'll figure something out. But either way, I'm here to help, and don't hesitate to reach out.
Students to take you seriously and respect you. The answer is 3 words: fair, firm, and consistent. Now, my story goes like this. I mean, I've been teaching 20 years now, and when I first year started teaching, it was a nightmare. And it's actually at the point where the principal said those words to me: I don't think this is working out. I don't think this is a good fit. You never want to hear those words, right? You never want to hear those words. He said, but we'll give you one more chance. We're going to pair you up with a teacher. And we're going to call his teacher Mr. B. And I'm paired up with Mr. B. And 2 things I noticed about him. One, he always walked around the clipboard, which I'll talk about later on when we do our seating chart video here. And the other thing I noticed about him was his philosophy, and that was fair, firm, and consistent. So in all honesty, this is my phrase, I got this from him. And it makes sense, but when you really break it down, you kind of get a better idea of each of those components. So let's do that. Now, what you got to understand, and when I first started teaching, I thought the way to have students like me was to, be like their best friend, make the class exciting and everything else. But as we talked about that, students more than anything else want structure and stability. And if that's the mindset you have coming into it, you're not going to have that stability and that structure if you're just trying to be their friend. So fair, firm, consistent is the way to go. So fair, what does that mean? Here's what this means. It means that you treat all students the same when it comes to dealing with behavior. Now, there's, of course, always exceptions, IEPs and stuff of that sort, and definitely take that into account. But broadly speaking, you treat all students the same with the way you deal or the way you discipline behavior. I'll give you an example. Let's say your school has a policy of no phones, and there's this one student, he's always in trouble. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right? He's always in trouble. And so you take his phone because he seems to have it out every other day. And then here comes one day, and one of your best students, let's say she has her phone out. If you see that, and we'll call Johnny, the student's always in trouble, and Johnny sees that, and that you do not discipline that favorite student the same way, he's going to call you out on it. If he doesn't call you out verbally, he'll call you on it with his behavior. You're going to lose that respect with Johnny. So even though you're disciplining Johnny, even though Johnny may not like you, I promise you, he at least respects the fact that you are carrying through with what you're saying you're going to carry through. And if you don't carry that through with somebody else, you're going to lose that. So once again, to be fair, you got to treat every student the same when it comes to discipline. Once again, there are certain exceptions, but overall, that's how you got to do it. So fair, firm. This is the second part of it. Firm. You got to, going back to the idea, what's your ideal classroom? I always kind of call that my threshold, right? What can I tolerate? And you got to make sure that as soon as you go beyond that point of something you can tolerate, you got to stop it right then and there, because if you don't, it's only going to snowball and get worse. And so firm is a little different from each person as far as what you're going to discipline. But the idea is, once you know that level, you got to hold that level. You got to hold that line of firmness. You got to, in your mind, you got to know, I'm not going to let behavior progress beyond this point. Give you an example. My class, I kind of have a rule, if you need a sharpen pencil, something like that, raise your hand. But once in a while, students will get up and go sharpen their pencil. So that's something I'm not that 100% firm on, because my overall goal is to stop disruptive behavior. And if I know my class can actually get up and sharpen their pencil without being disruptive behavior, I let it go, right? So I know my different levels on things. But some things I just do not tolerate. Some things I do not tolerate. That is speaking while I'm speaking. So if I'm speaking and the students are saying something, I'll stop, and right then and then I will address that behavior. So firm, just make sure you know where you're looking for and hold that line. So we got fair, firm, and this one right here, I believe, is more important than anything else, and that is consistent. You gotta be consistent with your behavior, and it is hard sometimes. I mean, we're human. We're gonna have good days, we're gonna have bad days. Things are gonna happen in our life that are gonna overflow to the classroom. I get it, I understand, and students understand to a degree as well. But the more consistent you are, the better your classroom is going to run. You got to be consistent. So if you say something, hey, we got a rule, no gum in this class, and that's something you want to be firm about, right? You got to treat your student fair about that, and you're firm. That's what you want to do. Then you have to carry it through, because what happens? Students will test the boundaries all the time, and the moment they see that you're not consistent with something, then they're going to be tested more to get past that line. You got to be consistent. So whatever you decide is important, make sure you carry it all the way through. And when it comes time in this course to actually implement our discipline policy, it comes time to implement and transform in our classroom, that's the key of it all, is being consistent. So once you have an idea of what you want to happen in the classroom, you got to know how to work towards that, but you got to make sure you don't bite off more than you can chew, and you got to be able to make sure that you're consistent with it for the next several weeks. So in my opinion, out of the three, that is the most important. But if you're fair, firm, and consistent, I promise you, you're going to gain the respect of your students. And with that, as weird as it sounds, they're actually going to like being around you, because you create that stability. In preparation for carrying out our plan of classroom transformation, we need to make sure our administration knows what's going on. And so to give you a better feel for what they want from you, it's important to know what's going on in their life. Now, I don't necessarily mean the personal life, but I mean life at school. Now, I've been working with administration more closely, I say, within the past 2 years than I have been before. And I can tell you, it is a rough job. It really is a rough job, especially at middle school. In my opinion, the hardest position at middle school is being a vice principal, because you're always dealing with discipline. And when I look at them and what they got to do, if you think it's rough in the classroom, holy smokes, it is rough in that office. There's so many things. We're not even talking necessarily just about the discipline, but all the other duties they have to carry out. And then on top of that, the discipline they have to follow up on, they get the worst of the worst, obviously, coming to their office. And I'm sure no matter where you go, they are overwhelmed, overworked and overwhelmed. And so what you want to keep in mind is your goal, in order to have the support of administration, your goal is to kind of make, I'm not sure that's the word, is their life easier. But what you should focus on is controlling the discipline in your classroom, so that when you actually make the transformation, less of it funnels up to them, and of course they're going to be happy. And what you want to do is you want to go to your administration and give them a heads up of what's going on. Just let them know, hey, I'm transforming my classroom. I'm making some changes in it. And just so you know, you may see a few more, we call them referrals, a few more referrals coming your way, or there may be more detentions coming your way, however your school works the discipline policy out. But the whole purpose of that is so I can go ahead and make this change in my classroom. But I'm thinking maybe 2 to 3 weeks, but when that is done, it should be better off. And you want to let them know that, because what happens, you want their support. Because the worst thing is when you send a student to the office, and then next thing you know, 10 minutes later, they're sent back. And you're thinking, what was the point of sending them to the office? And so if you give your administration a heads up what you're planning on doing, on how you're going to carry things out, that way they can better support you. And that way, if they see a little bit of an influx of students coming to their office, they know your bigger plan. And from that, I'm sure they will support you as you carry out the transformation. And another little side note about this, as far as the classroom management goes, in all my 20 years of teaching, I never heard of a teacher getting fired because they didn't carry out a lesson plan properly. You know what I mean by that is, we have certain standards we covered, but maybe they didn't cover the standard exactly a way that it was supposed to be covered, or maybe they skipped over something. I never really heard a teacher get fired because of that, but I have heard and I've seen teachers get fired because the classroom is out of control. And so that classroom management is the key to everything. So keep that in mind. Work on that classroom management, give administration a notice of what's going on, and overall, they're going to be happy because it means less stuff is going to funnel to them in the long run. What will it take to see a difference in your class? The good news is this. I actually think it's going to be easier than you think it is. It's going to take some effort. Don't get me wrong. It's going to take some time. Don't get me wrong, that will. It's going to take both of those things. But what you're going to find out is if you are consistent, if you follow through with things, you're going to see changes that you thought you would never see. And it goes to this. Now think about your class. I got a class of about 30 students. Just pause for a second and think, in your class of 30 students, how many students are been problems in the past week? Now, it could be small problems, big problems, but how many have somehow come up on your radar in one way or the other? And for me, I can honestly say that maybe I have 1, 2, maybe 3 the most in a class that have come up on my radar. And I'm quite happy with that. Because if you think that's only 3 students that come up on your radar, that means you got 27 students that are not showing up in your radar. 27 students that are not giving you any kind of grief or any kind of behavior issues. And that is a relief. That actually makes coming to school enjoyable and teaching enjoyable. And so here's what I found out. I was listening to this podcast, and the ironic thing, he wasn't even talking about school or students. He was talking about business and the culture in a workplace. And what he mentioned was this. He said it's a 10-80-10 rule. 10-80-10 rule. And here's what he said. He said, in almost every dynamic you have, you're going to have about 10% of the people that are negative, causing problems. And he said you're going to have 10% of the people that are positive and uplifting and bringing everybody up. And then you have about 80% of the people that are kind of in the middle and could go either way. And I thought about that, and that's the classroom. That really is a classroom. Now think about it. If you have 30 students, 10% of 30 would be 3 students. So I guarantee that you have 3 students in your class that, even if your class is chaotic, you have 3 students that always are working, always polite, always doing the work, and doing everything you want an ideal student to be. And then if you look at the other spectrum, there are probably about 3 students that are the ringleaders, the troublemakers, the ones that are a problem every day. All right? And then the rest of them, 24 or so, are kind of in the middle. And depending upon how your class is structured, depending upon how much you have functioned in your class to the point of discipline, will determine where that 24 go. Either they start falling to 3 that are great, awesome students, or they start moving to the side where they're being very disruptive. And so this 10-80-10 thing, this is actually a blessing. And here's the reason why. Because once you put the structure in your classroom, once you start focusing on the discipline, once you start transforming your classroom, what you're going to notice is this, and this is going to be, I'm telling you, this is where I get excited about this, actually seeing this stuff put into play, is you're going to see that once you do it, that 24 students that are sometimes coming up the radar, sometimes not, you're going to see them moving more towards being that ideal student that you're looking for. Now, you're still going to have those 3 students that are going to have to, you're going to have to deal with, and we'll talk about that in later videos, but once you start seeing that shift in your class, oh man, it gets exciting, because then you can do new things in your class, and then you can try things, and you can see things develop in your classroom that you've never seen happen before. So this 10-80-10, the second part of it goes like this. And what you can see is once that, that group of 24 students comes over to we'll call it the good side, right? Come over to the good side, that 1, 2, 3 students over here that are left, you're going to see about half of them, 1 or 2, convert as well. And then you're left with about 1 or 2 students that you might have to deal with on a regular basis. And I'm telling you, at that point in time, teaching really does become truly enjoyable. Now, what you got to keep in mind, though, is you got to be consistent in all this. You got to keep going with it. For me, it takes, and this is where the whole thing comes in, transferring classroom under a month comes in. It's going to take about 3 weeks, probably about 3 weeks of solid, consistent work to transform your classroom, to get that whole group coming over to your side. So you got to be willing to put the time in. Now, I've been doing this forever, and luckily I put those 3 weeks in at the beginning of the year, and so the rest of the year for me, for the most part, turns out to be really good. But if we're just transforming right now, keep in mind, mindset, I got to do this for 3 weeks. You might have your doubts and you can be exhausted, but you put 3 weeks in, you're going to see transformations that's going to make the rest of your school year wonderful. So keep that in mind. 10-80-10, 3 weeks, we got
How
this.
to implement your plan and get some of your time back. Now, I out of all the lessons, this is probably my favorite one. And the reason why, because this is finally where the rubber meets this road. This is finally where we start seeing and we put things in place
to finally get that transformation we worked so hard to build up to. I mean, so far, we covered a lot of things. We covered what's the right presence to have in your class, kind of that calm assertiveness. We talked about what your administration is looking for. We talked about the ideal class. What are you looking for? What are your thresholds? What things are you hoping the students will be doing in your class? And we just covered so many different things preparing for this moment. But now is the time we really put it all together. Now is the time to hold our students accountable. Now, the first thing you gotta understand is this. The reason we are doing this, the reason we are issuing some consequences, that's where we're going with this, is to start issuing some consequences, isn't to punish the students. That's never our goal, is to punish the students. What we're looking for is behavior change. We're looking for them to change their behavior, which is going to require, a lot of times, some sort of consequences put in place. And as we mentioned before, to do this, you got to adhere to that fair, firm, and consistent. And the key above all of those for me is consistent. So we're going to put something in place, and we have to be mindful of that, because whatever we commit to, we got to be able to make sure that we can carry out long term. Long term being a year if need be. Now, the honest truth is this, that once you start putting things in place, you're going to see students quickly start to change some of their behavior. But we got to be prepared to put the effort into it. And so part of that is being able to, be consistent with it, be able to carry it on long term, is we're going to do something called a progression. So the consequences are going to follow a progression. And in fact, I believe there's once again, there's some material there if you want to download material that talks about different progressions for these students or these consequences. But the reason we want to have a progression is because if we jump from 0 to 100, if we jump from, suddenly issuing a whole bunch of detentions or calling home a lot, it's going to wear us out. It takes so much time to do that. And if we're spending all our time doing that, we're not going to have the energy to stick with the plan long term. So to combat that, to make it where we can be consistent long term, we're going to have a progression of consequences that are going to build upon each other so that we get the behavior change we're looking for. Because our goal is to put some pressure on the students to change their behavior, but not too much pressure where it's going to take away from our ultimate time and energy. And that is part of the other goal of this, is how to issue these consequences and get some of your time and energy back. Now, the best way to kind of demonstrate this is to kind of give you some examples. Now, forgive me, I am not an actor, so please forgive this little role-playing thing going on here. But that'd probably be the best way to demonstrate what we're looking for. And the other part of it is it might be a little bit longer video, because I really want to make sure we have this honed in. So get comfortable, get a cup of coffee, sit down, and let's go through this together. As we go through this, a couple things to keep in mind is keep that calm, assertive energy all the way through. Now, don't get me wrong, there's going to be times, and there's been times where I lost my temper, but it never really does any good. So the more calm, assertive you can be, the better. The more consistent you can be, the better. And here's a little tidbit of advice that I want to give you regarding that. As you're issuing some consequences, you may get some feedback, especially at first, you may get more resistance and feedback. Going back to my previous life where I was saying, me and my wife were doing doggy daycare, and Cesar Milan, once again, I want to make sure, I'm not saying students hurt dogs or anything like that, but it's amazing the concepts there apply to teaching as well. But I remember Cesar Milan be working with some animals, some dogs, and he'd walk into a house, and the dogs, just the energy wasn't right. And so what the owner would do is the owner would hand over the leash to Cesar Milan. And then Cesar Milan did this thing. So the dog was all hyper and crazy. The owner handed the leash over to Cesar Milan, and Cesar Milan just held that leash. And that dog went crazy. I mean, it was jumping up and down, flailing all around, rolling on the ground, barking. Yeah, you name it. It was just crazy. But for about a whole minute, Cesar Milan was just there with the leash, just holding the leash. That was it, just holding the leash. The dog's doing what the dog is doing. It is going crazy, it is resisting, it is fighting. The amazing thing happened. About after a minute, that dog finally settled down, and then Cesar Milan was able to do what he needed to do. That is the same approach you want to take to issuing these consequences. You are going to get some resistance. You are going to get some pushback. But when you do, remain calm, assertive, and just picture in your mind holding that leash. holding a leash. You're not gonna get angry, you're not gonna get upset, you're just gonna hold that leash. Students are gonna do whatever they're doing. They might, voice off, oh, this is stupid, this is ridiculous, or why are you picking on me, or whatever else it is. Just hold the leash, that's it. And after a minute, you're probably gonna see their demeanor kind of just settle down a little bit. Because what they're looking for is a fight, and if you're not participating in that fight, they get nothing to work with, all right? So keep that in mind as we go through this. So here we go. All right, let me get my marker here, so get comfortable. Once again, this might be a long one for you, but bear with me. I'm telling you, this is good stuff here. So before you even have the students come to class, I would definitely recommend you have a seating chart for the students. So this is one way of dealing with behavior before the students even walk in the room. Once again, this is not to punish the students. This is nothing for that at all. It is mainly to strategically plan where students go. And by now, once you're with the students a week or two, you know what pairs you don't want to match, have together. You know where the talkers are and the disruption is happening in your class. And so plan for it. Move seats. And so what you may get some feedback on this, or pushback actually on this. Why you move my seat? Why you pick on me? Whatever else. When that happens, just hold that leash. Just hold the leash. And just tell them, hey, I'm just trying new things. Or, I'm just looking for the best success in this class. Or, hey, it just wasn't working there. To be honest, it doesn't make a difference too much what you say at this point. What makes a difference is just being fair, firm, calm, and hold the leash. And whatever they say, oh, this isn't right, why are you picking me with everything else? Just, hey, I'm sorry, just, this is the best thing for the class. Whatever you want to say, doesn't make too big of a difference, but what's important more is your approach to it. So before students even walk in, I would do my seating chart to make it the best possible arrangement to produce success regarding behavior in the class. That's the first thing. Then the next thing I would do is, this is how it would look in the class. It's a progression. And so the consequences you want to issue, try to make it small at first. So for example, here are some consequences that I would give. It'd be something like this, all right? So little Johnny's in the back and Johnny's acting up. I might just go up to Johnny and I might say, hey, Johnny, I need you to settle down. So if the students are working independently, I might just go up to Johnny and tell Johnny, hey, settle down. If I'm up here giving instruction and Dad's having me back there, then what I'd probably do is I'd probably just turn around and I'd just write Johnny's name on the board. That is it. Now, Johnny's going to ask, hey, what's that for? And I'll probably say, I'll talk to you in a few minutes, and then just keep going on with my lesson. All right? Or I may call Johnny out, possibly. Johnny's back there talking, hey, Johnny. And I just put his name up here. And if he says, hey, what's that for? I'll talk to you in a few minutes. And if he wants to argue back and forth, ignore him. Just keep going on with your lesson. All right? And just hold that leash. Okay? And then what you do is you go up to Johnny. And so what I tell my students at the beginning of the year is this. I say, hey guys, if I put your name up here, that's a detention. But usually what I'll do is I'll come up to the student, sometime in their period, and say, hey, I got your name there for detention. I want to let you know, I just mainly wanted to talk to you, and we're having this conversation now. So I'll take your name off detention, but just make sure you know, next time this happens, you will have to serve a detention. So this is the first step of the progression. It's just acknowledging, or you letting them know that their behavior is not appropriate, and you put their name up there. You could put up there, you could go talk to them individually, however you want to do it, but the first step is just to call them out, not necessarily in public, but just call them out on their behavior, all right? And make sure they know that you know what's going on. And that's the first thing. And then have a quick conversation with them. So this whole process here is real fast, and it probably takes no more than a minute. From the time I put this up there to me talking to a student, that is it, right? That's the first step in the progression. The second step in the progression, let's say the behavior continues. Then I might do something like this. Hey, Johnny, we already talked once, all right? Things aren't changing. See me after class, right? And that'd be the second step. So once again, a quick conversation I went before didn't work, or maybe it's the next day and the behavior continues, whatever. Now I got to take it up one more level, and so that's see me after class. The see me after class is probably the same thing, only a minute or two conversation. May not even be a detention at this point. And the idea behind it, once again, you're calling them out again, but also let them know that there's a progression to it. And so at this point, what I'd probably do in the conversation, I'd probably let them know what's going to happen next is, hey, we already talked once. This is the second time the behavior is happening. I just want to let you know this continues. You definitely are going to have a detention. I'm going to have to call home. So the next thing is call them out on it again, but then tell them the next thing above that will probably be a phone call home. All right. The exact verbiage doesn't matter too much. The exact sequence doesn't matter too much, but you want to have a sequence to it. So the third time, and once again, this doesn't have to be in the same class period. This could be over a period of days or even weeks, however you want to do it. Once again, that depends upon your threshold. But kind of the next level actually would be a detention. And for me, I'd probably do a 15-minute or 10-minute lunch detention, or possibly a 10-minute detention nutrition. I'd probably do a 10-minute detention somewhere, okay? And so once again, next level, 10 minutes. And during that 10-minute detention, what I would do is we would do a reflection sheet. And once again, there's another document you can download that talks about different reflection sheets. So that way you can see what I'm talking about. I'll probably give them a reflection sheet, what gives them a chance to discuss more of, why the behavior the way it is. But so now we went from just a quick conversation to maybe after class with a warning to now maybe actual detention. All right. And then the next step would probably be a half an hour detention, a phone call home. Now, I try not to get to that point too often because that takes a lot of time for me, because anytime I have to call home is usually a 10-minute conversation. If I have a half an hour detention, that takes half an hour of my day to issue detention. And so once again, those detentions, I don't jump to right away. There's a progression to get there. But if it does get to that, here's the thing, you got to be consistent with it and carry through whatever you say. So if it is a half an hour detention, I know for us in my school, if it's a half hour detention, we have to call home, let parents know and everything else. So it takes a lot more effort. And then from the next step from there would probably be a referral to the office or something. Give yourself a pat on the back for making it this far in the course and for seeing this program all the way through. Now you're at the point in time right now where you are implementing these ideas in your classroom. And I'm gonna let you know up front right now, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna get hard. And what's hard about it is being consistent, because you gotta do this day in, day out for a good 3 weeks to see that transformation. But you can do it. You can do it. Now, if you do feel yourself struggling a little bit, either with the consistency or just trying to stay motivated, trust me, it is worth it in the end. You're going to reap the benefits at the end. But as always, if you need some further assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out. I do one-on-one coaching. We can help you specifically with things in your classroom, but I am here to help. And you can always find my information on the right-hand side of the homepage of the course. Reach out, send me email. But whatever you need, I can help you with.
The time is finally here, but we're putting all these ideas and all our preparation into action. So the first thing you want to do is go to your administration. Now, we kind of mentioned this before in our previous video on what administration is looking for, but I want to give you some verbiage, some words you can say to your administration to make sure they're definitely on board, and as well to find exactly what they're looking for from you. So here we go. So it is time to implement our plan. And so what you want to do is go to your administration. Maybe, depending on how your relationship is, you might have to set up an appointment with them, or you can maybe they always have a office that's open, but just make sure it's a good time for them. And so you're going to go in there, and what you're going to let them know. And if you're having problems in your classroom, chances are they know that already, because things have already come up to them, right? Funneled up over to the process. Or they heard from somewhere else and they have a really good idea of what's going on already, and as well as how things are in your classroom. So if things are not going well, when you talk with your administration, let them know, hey, I'm going to try some new things in my classroom just to make sure I get this class finally under control, because, they're kind of squirrely. But I want to give you a heads up on that. So that way, if you see a few more referrals coming your way or a few more detentions coming your way, you understand what's going on. But my goal is, by the end of these 3 weeks, to have this on lock. Right? You don't have to exactly say those same words. I'm not the best speaker, but you get the sense, right? You just want to communicate to them what your plan is, right? Maybe, tell them, I understand how problems in my classroom already, but want to make the change. Here's my plan. And then the other part of it is you want to make sure you really understand their process, because they're not just dealing with students that you're dealing with, they're students dealing with the entire campus. And so at this point in time, you want to ask them or clarify any of the procedures they are looking for. So for example, if I'm going to send a kid to the office in my class, I have to fill out a referral form. All right. Now the referral form is done online, and I have to let them know why I'm sending them to the office, and I have to let them know if I communicated with the parent yet, and I have to let them know if I had any issues before. There's a lot of little steps that I need to do if I want to send a student to the office. That's just how our school runs. And so as you're having this conversation with the administration, you want to clarify or just really understand the process, so that way they can support you and that way they can have your back. So at this point in time, you would ask, if I am going to send a kid up to the office, how exactly would you like me to do that? Would you like me to send you an email? Would you like me to call, have security pick them up, fill out a form? Whatever it is. And you probably have an idea already, but just make sure it's exactly what they're looking for. So that way, if the kid does go up to the office, you know that administration can take care of their part. So just understand the process, the procedures, clarify with them what they're looking for as far as how to send kids up to the office, and just give them the big picture of how you're transforming your classroom. And then by the end of the 3 weeks, when we make this transformation, it is going to be a blessing, not only for you, but for your administration. And if your administration is any good at all and they have any sense at all, they'll know that and they'll actually be thankful that you made that change. The time has come for us to finally implement all of this stuff that we've been going over for this past week or two. I mean, you are ready. You got the right mindset. You're calm, assertive. You're ready. That's ready to go. Your administration knows what's going on. We talked about progression and how you're going to discipline, right? The order progression, and to kind of keep things under control and not overwhelm yourself. And we talked about that. And all these things are finally put into place. We thought about it, we prepared, now it's finally to see some action. And this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where it gets exciting. This is where we get this from this point forward. I want you to count from the moment you start this. So maybe it's tomorrow. You're watching the video today, and tomorrow you put this in play. I want you to count 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Got to give it 3 weeks. It takes a while to transform your classroom, to get students on board, and for them to see that you are serious, that you are going to be consistent. But I want you to mark your calendar from 3 weeks, and I want you to see the difference. It's going to be great. It is going to be great. So the first thing is consistent. Keep that in mind. Consistent. We got a progression, all right? But you got to be prepared for and you'll see it go down as it goes along, but you got to be prepared for the first day, 2, 3, 4, to really hit it hard, really be consistent with the discipline. Don't be afraid to issue detentions. Make sure you are prepared. Make sure you have time slotted out so you can carry through with those detentions if you need to. But you got to be consistent. So from here forward, however it's been in the past, lock that in, saying, I got to commit to this it's like anything, right? I got to commit to this for 3 weeks. Diet or something else, you got to do that. Right? So be consistent. The next thing you want to do is document behavior, because if, in fact, I assume you're going to have to document, because I know from my school, we have to document behavior in case it goes up to the next level. So start documenting things as well, not just for the administration, but for yourself. So that way you can see the change going on. All right. And then the next thing you're going to do is this. You're going to pick a class. Now, eventually you're going to roll this out through all your classes for sure. But once again, I don't want you to get overwhelmed from the get-go. So you know what's going to take. You know it's going to take some effort and time. You know you have to cut out some time for discipline, for detention, and everything else, and calling home and following up. So I pick your hardest class. Pick your hardest class, the one that when that bell rings, you go, you know that one, or the one you go home and start thinking about all night and have nightmares about. That class. Pick that class. And that's a class you're going to hit this hard with. Now, if you can, pick 2, pick 3, do them all if you can. But if you're not too sure at first and you don't want to get too overwhelmed, pick the hardest class, because that's the one you're going to see your greatest things in. And then once you start implementing your ideas with the hardest class and you start seeing that transformation, bring on the second class, the third class, fourth, whatever else it is. Okay? But go for the hardest one. There's the saying that goes, I think it's a Mark Twain saying. He said, if the hardest thing you have to do all day is eat a frog, then eat the frog in the morning. Get it on and over with. Same thing with this. Go for the hardest class, put it in place, and watch the magic happen. All right? So let's do it. 3 weeks from here on out. Boom, count it. 3 weeks. And please be consistent. Make sure you know every aspect of that class. Focus on the seating chart, all your tools in place, and we are going to see tremendous things happen. I am so looking forward to it. All right, well, now that you are carrying through with the plan, now that you are being consistent with everything, now that you're seeing the changes at your classroom, you're probably going to have to call home, right? Depending upon where you're at the progression of discipline, and chances of how many students you have, they have to, work with and convert to be a wonderful students. You probably already have, or you're probably going to have to call home. And so I wanted to give you some frameworks for that, and actually have it look to, in this module here, in this video here, you'll see the supporting document that goes along with it, some scripts on what to say with parents. But here's the thing I want you to keep in mind. When you're calling home, your primary goal is just to inform them of the behavior. Because depending upon, the level this goes up to, depending upon if this continues, you got to make sure the parents are aware of the behavior, especially if you start referring to the office, right? So your primary goal is just to inform the parents of the behavior. But the secondary goal is, and if it's possible, to have them come alongside you and support you on your discipline and the changes you want to make. Now, the second one's not guaranteed. So I would not rest my hat on that, and that I would not make that my overall objective and when calling home. But if it happens, I will take that any day. So with that said, when you call home, your goal is just to communicate to the parents what's going on. And the script will kind of walk you through that as you do that. But let me kind of just do a quick little role play here with you. I would call home and I would say, hey, this is Mr. Behill. Hi, this is Mr. Behill from whatever school you're from. I'm calling home regarding the student. Is there a Mr. or Mrs. or whatever their name might be, right? And so that's kind of clearing it's kind of like a sales thing, I guess. You kind of clear the time frame, kind of introduce yourself, and clear the time frame, and let them know who you're looking for. And then once they, get on the line. Now, here's the reality. I'm not sure where you work at, but I would say probably out of 8 out of 10 times, is it that many? Yeah, probably 8 out of 10 times I call home, I don't get a hold of anybody. And if I get an answer machine, we've been instructed not to leave a message on that, at least not leave a message what's happening, just saying, hey, this is so-and-so calling from the school, please give me a call back because of privacy issues. So out of 10 times I'm calling home, I'm lucky if maybe I get 2 parents on the line. And more often than not, when I discuss the problem I have in the class with the student, the parent's response is, yeah, I'm having the same problem here at home too. And that kind of like gives me a clue that, hey, I'm on my own regarding this student. But once you call home, once again, you introduce yourself and let them know what you're calling for. And then you're going to describe to them the behavior. And while you're doing this, keep in mind the goal, just to inform. It's not to share your frustration or your opinion about anything. Just kind of let them know what is going on. And if there's been any kind of discipline, of course, let them know what discipline was on your part as well. And then at that point in time is where we get to see the opinions of the parents. And it goes one of 2 ways. One way is they're supportive. And they could be supportive by saying, I understand, I have the same problems as so-and-so at home. I don't know what to do. That's supportive because at least they understand you and them are on the same page. Or they could be supportive, hey, if there's anything I can do, let me know. Yes, please go ahead and give them a detention, whatever else it might be. That is wonderful. And if you get that, that is a gem when it comes to teaching. But there's going to be the times that the parent is not going to be supportive. And so I kind of want to give you a little bit of insight on that one. If you get a parent that is not supportive, whatever you do not argue with them. Don't. If they start saying, well, you're a bad teacher, or, hey, well, you're the only teacher they have this problem with. Oh, I hate that one. You're the only teacher they have this problem with. First of all, don't believe it, okay? Don't believe it. But if they say that, or they say, you're not doing a good job, or you're picking on my son or daughter, what you do is don't argue. Don't argue. Look at that script. Look at that script I have going along with this. Affirm their opinions. Hey, I can understand why you might feel that way. All right? And then your comeback to that isn't say, well, little Johnny's actually doing this and this, or this is the problem. Your comeback to that is, once again, it's, hey, I can understand why you're feeling that way. But your comeback to that is, I just got to make sure I have a safe learning environment for everybody. Or I promise you, I'm not looking to signal your son or daughter out. I just got to make sure it's a safe learning environment for everybody. And that's all you're going to say, because they could go on for a long time. But if they see, eventually they get to the point they realize that they're not going to get an argument from you, and they're like, fine, whatever, and they'll hang up. Or like, I want to talk to administration, fine, whatever, and they'll hang up. But do not get engaged that back and forth with them, because you're not going to win. How can you win? What is winning in this situation? You can't win the argument, because you're not going to get them to believe what you're saying. And the more you argue with them, the more they're going to, that's going to overflow to the student. You're going to have more problems in your class. So as hard as it is, because trust me, I've been there, and I want to speak my mind about really, how your son or daughter really is. And they do know how their son or daughter really is. But overall, if the overall goal is just to inform parents, and if they are supportive, awesome. But if not, let it go. Then that is what you need to do. All right. So when it comes to dealing with parents, call home, use a script, just kind of introduce yourself, and then supportive parent, wonderful, great, we got them on our side. And if they're not supportive, do not engage in an argument, and try to get off the phone as quickly as possible without being antagonistic and so forth. So hopefully that helps. I mean, this is the last video we got in this series, at least stage plan video in this series. I think there's another bonus video coming up, which has to do with my seating chart, which I'm hoping will help you overall with your classroom management as well. But this is the last video that we have in this 12 video series. So I'm not sure where you're at in the 3-week process, but keep at it, keep consistent, stay with it, and you are going to see that change.
Now, your detentions are going to take care of most of these students, but you're still going to have some that are just going to take it to the next level. I mean, these are going to be the defiant students. Now, when I look at my kids overall, I would say I maybe have about 130, 140 students, and out of the 130, 140 students, I maybe have 5, maybe 1 each period, that are just openly defiant. And so to those, there's a little tad different strategy you want to use. Now, of course, we're going to fall back on our calm, assertive. With all of this, you got to be calm, especially with these students here, the defiant ones. You got to be calm, assertive. If you take anything personal, it's gonna erupt like crazy. Now, once again, confession, there have been plenty of times where I have lost it. Plenty of times I lost it, where the students pushed the right buttons and they got me to respond a certain way. But if you can make sure that doesn't happen, or do your very best, make sure it doesn't happen. Don't take things personal, right? Remain calm, assertive. And when students are going through the thing, remember, just picture that little dog holding out that leash, right? And let the dog kind of, roam around, or just let the dog kind of go crazy for a few minutes. That's going to help you get past these moments. Once again, the goal is to change student behavior. But if a student chooses to take it to the next level, you need to have a plan. And here's how I go about doing that. I'm going to give you 2 examples, 2 role-playing examples. Once again, please forgive my acting. But the idea is, by do the role-playing, hopefully hear the right tone, and from there you can also apply that to your class. So the first example to give, let's say students are talking in class, and maybe I did that detention thing, and they just didn't respond to it. And so maybe I do, take the next level of detention, still don't respond. And so maybe I ask one of the students, I need you to move your seat, right? And if a student refuses to move their seat, then for me, that takes it to the next level, because that's a defiance. And if students are not following the rules in your classroom becomes very dysfunctional. And so for me, defiance is kind of next level stuff. So here's how I would respond to that. So I'll say, Johnny, I need you to move your seat, please. Go ahead and move your seat. And maybe I say it out loud, or maybe I talk to him privately. But then I'll give Johnny about a minute, because once again, he might just be willing to do it, but he doesn't want to do it right away, because then he can feel like he's giving in. But if you give him about a minute to do it, then more often than not, they will actually move. And so I will literally actually ask the student to move, and then I will look at my watch and I'll wait for that minute to pass. Now, if a student does not move at that point in time, I don't call them out in front of the class, because then that's what they're looking for. They're looking for that attention, right? They're looking for that attention. And so if I ask the student to do something, hey, Johnny, I need you to move your seat, and I give it a minute, he doesn't move his seat, then that's when I got to have a plan, and I go to the next part of the plan. And I'll quietly come up to Johnny and say, hey, Johnny, I'm not sure if you heard me or not, but I need you to move your seat. It's just not working with you here. And I'll say it right around that tone. So let me do it one more time. I'll kind of come up to Johnny, and a lot of times I actually will kneel down to Johnny's level. I take away the whole power struggle feeling to it. And I'll say, hey, Johnny, I'm not sure if you heard me, but I need you to move your seat. Things are not working with you here. And then, here's the thing, I walk away. I don't wait for a response back or him to reply back. I just kind of state what needs to happen, and then I'm leaving him alone to make that decision. Minute passes, I'll come to him one more time. Say, hey, Johnny, I'm not sure what's going on, but here's the deal, Johnny. I need you to move seats. You have a choice. You can, if you don't want to move seats, I mean, just let me know. If you refuse to move seats, let me know, and I'll write a referral to the office. But otherwise, I need you to move seats. I'm going to come back to my desk, work on something, but I need you to move your seat. And so once again, I say to him again quietly, and then I also advise him the next step would be a referral to the office, and I'm giving that one more chance, that one more minute to make the right decision. And then if he does move seats, we're all good, right? He probably feels like he's finally had a say in it somewhat, you know, so maybe he moves seats. And if he does, then we are good. Now, of course, there's still the other consequences beforehand. Maybe it was the detention or something else, but he altered his behavior so there was no further consequences. But the key is I kind of do it in smaller increments. So once again, hey, Johnny, I need you to move your seat. That's maybe the first time. Second time, hey, Johnny, I'm not sure if you heard me, but I need you to move your seat. It's not working here. And then the third time, hey, Johnny, you still haven't moved your seat. I'm going to give you one more minute to move your seat. If not, I got to assign you detention. So you have two choices. Either please move your seat to over here where I located, or if you don't, I have to give a referral. So the choice is yours. And that last one, once again, I kind of put it in their hands. So that way maybe they feel a little more empowered to make the right decision. So that's how I would handle defiance in that case. So let me give you another example of defiance here and kind of let you know how I would handle it. Once again, pay attention to the tone and kind of the little progression that goes along with it. So let's say I sign a detention. I put it on the board like we showed in the previous video, and it still becomes argumentative. You know, oh, this is stupid, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I just kind of let it go. I kind of let it go for about a minute, picturing that dog holding that leash. Let it go for about a minute. Now, if they still are continuing after that point, and then obviously they're trying to take it to the next level. And then that's when I would come up to them and I would say, Tiffany, we'll say Tiffany for example. So I'll come up to Tiffany, hey Tiffany, I know you're not happy with the detention. I tell you what, we can talk about that detention later on, but I need you to settle down. And she might respond back with some hostility, some anger. You know, you're this, you're blah, blah, you're blah, 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 blah. And when she's doing that, I'm kind of walking away. I tell her, Tiffany, I need you to calm down. And then I walk away. I don't engage with them, right? Give it about a minute. And then if she still doesn't calm down, I'll come back to her one last time. Hey, Tiffany, it's not working in here. So you got two choices. Either you settle down, and if you choose not to settle down, then I got to send the office. But you have a choice. So either please settle down, all right? No more yelling back and forth, or I got to send you to the office. And then hopefully she will settle down. Give her that choice, empower her. Things are not working. You're empowered to make the right decision, Tiffany, and hopefully she does. Now, if she doesn't, then of course, and same thing with Johnny or Tiffany, whoever it is, if they choose to keep going, then that's when I would send them to the office. And this is where it becomes so important for you to understand what your school expectation is of you. All right? Do they want you to document things a certain way? Are there so many interventions you have to do? Whatever it is, make sure you got that in place. So that way, if you do send them to the office, you know they got your back. All right, so that is how I would handle a defiant student. Calm, assertive, quietly, give them like 1, 2, 3 chances. The last chance, I kind of empower them. You get to make a choice. Use your two choices. Either do what I ask you to do, or you got to be sent to the office. And then the final thing is, if they still continue not to follow it, then you send them to the office. And hopefully, you have the support of your administration, and you know how to handle that process.
Well, I hope you found the video helpful. And as I mentioned before and several different times, if you need anything at all, please just send me an email, get a hold of me, contact me, and I'd be more than happy to see how I can help you out. Have a great year.